There's been shenanigans in Florida. We all know about 2016 with Tim Canova being shafted, or potentially shafted, because we don't necessarily know the reality of it. We just know that there were ballots that were destroyed when Tim Canova wanted to go and inspect those votes. So right off the bat, it gives you a certain degree of skepticism with what's taking place in the electoral process, and it gives a certain degree of doubt. As a rational human being will want to be able to evaluate the election process to know, did I win? Did I lose? How many votes did I get? You want to know those things. And you want to be able to inspect those things. That's not necessarily an insane thing. That's not necessarily a crazy thing. And when a person breaks the law, stopping you from doing that, rational human being asks why. Is there something to this that I am unaware of? It's possible that he completely lost on board, even Stephen in this case. Possible he didn't. I have no idea, because we can't necessarily inspect the actual ballots. Rick Scott didn't care about this when Rick Scott had the opportunity to care about this. When people were like, wait a minute, how is there no consequence for this? She broke the law. How is there no consequence for this? And when Tim Canova ran pillar to post trying to get anybody to validate the fact, to validate his reality, to validate the fact that he had been wrong, that the process had been subverted. This is after shirking Sanders in the last process, with everybody grinning idiots around saying, nothing to see here, folks. Perfectly impartial. And if you don't believe it's impartial, you're just a sore loser. Now, get behind her. Not in a nasty way. You're just with her. Now, fast forward to 2020. And in 2020, Gillum, invertebrate, concedes right off the bat before all the votes counted. Stacey Abrams, not an invertebrate, who's very aggressive in what she's trying to do in that state, understands that she's been cheated in Georgia, refuses to concede. Oh, I love that. That's gumption. That's what should have taken place for the last 20 years. That should have been what took place even under Gore, another invertebrate, resigning, wet spaghetti, falling apart. So in this particular case, Florida, specifically Florida, Broward County, several days behind everybody else in the voting, and a ton of votes for Gillum. Now, that's not necessarily all that crazy. This is an African-American district, and if I'm not mistaken, there was one other district, I think it was Palm Beach or something. But in this very specific case in Broward County, Tim Canova flips out, put both barrels, and say, there's something wrong here. Why on earth is it taking this woman 2 days to tally up the vote? How on earth did they just find a box of votes randomly sitting somewhere? This stinks. This stinks. Now, people who didn't give two shits about Tim Canova prior, Republicans, all of a sudden care immensely about Tim Canova. And they bring him on to the television show so he can speak his piece and give his gospel. And they say, yes, Tim, we agree with you wholeheartedly. Something stinks here. And Rick Scott comes out screaming, oh my God, there's something wrong here. Now, he doesn't do anything from the standpoint of his powers as a governor, but yelling at the height of his lungs is enough, seeing that he is in a position of governor. And screaming that there's something wrong here. What's his name? Little Marco Rubio tweets out Tim Canova's image or video and insinuating that votes are somehow being transported in a wrong way. Somebody else tweets out something saying, we found people filling out ballots. All of these things, conspiracy theories. And I mean this in a negative from the standpoint of Republicans, but I don't mean this in a negative from the standpoint of Tim. And I know I'm making a distinction here, but the distinction matters. In Tim's case, Tim is responding naturally to the environment to which Tim was around. He has doubts. He has uncertainties. Those uncertainties are not necessarily wrong. He just wants those uncertainties resolved. Republicans don't care. They're partisan actors. In their particular case, they just want to win. They just want to stop the vote. They want to sow doubt in the voting process itself if they're going to lose that voting process. They don't give two shits about the Constitution. They don't give two shits about what Florida thought. They just want it stopped. And they will use whatever rock, brick, or Tim Canova to do it. Just saying. This goes to court. Now, in an emergency hearing, Brenda Snipes, the one that's part of Broward, and you may remember her starring in the other role in 2016, had to essentially give the information that the governor wanted, Rick Scott wanted. This was within his legal powers to compel, saying, we want you to be able to tell us how many ballots you have. Now, she's been saying, I have no idea what that number is. I have no idea what that number is. Now, with all of this focus on Broward, you've had people showing up pissed off. Broward County officials need police protection to tally Florida election results because they're trying to count the votes. Now, personally, I want all votes to count. I want to know what the people got in this election. I don't want this nonsense of sopping the votes like they did with George W. Bush. I want every vote to count. This has nothing to do with partisan politics to me. This has to do with the democracy itself. It is a subversion of the democratic process. If every vote is not allowed to count, it is a subversion of the democratic process when they are allowed to game the system, be it scrub people off the voter rolls or not accept a percentage of absentee ballots. Whether it's instituting voter ID, if the voter ID is not done for real and earnest reasons, and let's be honest, there's no voter fraud, so it is not. These people are crossed and pissed off. Doubt. Doubt in the political process. Doubt in the corporate hacks that are essentially getting elected through that political process. Doubt. Now, these are Republicans. It seems always odd to me that this doubt doesn't come into play when the system is being gamed, like in Georgia, when they're knocking people off the voting rolls, moving voting locations, adding in voter ID laws, when they're doing all this stuff to game the system, none of them care. But in this case, look at them. Angry and violent out here. Broward County officials need police protection to tally Florida election results. They're yelling, lock her up. They have no evidence. It is possible this is incompetence. I don't know if that's true. It does stink. But just because it stinks doesn't necessarily mean it's what they say it is. And fact of the matter is, they care less about it is and more just about their person winning. There's a difference in those things. I want every vote to count. That's what I want. I want the democratic process. I don't want the democratic will of people to be subverted for political aims. That is not what I want. I want every vote to count. If Gillum wins, he wins. If DeSantis wins, DeSantis wins. Let the people vote. That's where I am. This goes to an emergency hearing. When they're doing this, machine glitches delay start a ballot recount in Broward County for hours. Meaning they were trying to count the votes again, and the machines that they had weren't working right, and the machines kept screwing up over and over and over and over again, which essentially delayed the vote for hours. And in one case, I even saw it may delay the vote for days longer, meaning we may not know who won this race in the greatest democracy on earth for days after the election because of fuck-ups, failures, and foibles of the individuals that were involved in this process. This is embarrassing. Can we dispel this notion of the greatest democracy on earth and deal with the failures that is in this particular government? And the part of that is allowing people to vote. Automatic voter registration. If you're an American citizen, congratulations. Voting is your birthright. It's attached to your social security number, and it would follow you to the day that you die. You don't have to go from this place or that place. We're going to put in voter infrastructure that's impartial to what we have. We're going to use paper ballots, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to allow hand counting in a space where people can see the actually counting process. We're going to fix this representative government. And we're going to make it that shining city on the hill that people talk about. That's what I want. That's the most rational thing in the world. But that's not what we get. We get gamesmanship. Right here. Judge sees no evidence of vote counting fraud in Broward County. Let's let him say it. I'm not going to say it. Okay, he's talking slow, and I don't want to get a copyright strike. So I'm going to stop him and slow talking. But I'll show you what's being said. Vote counting sees no evidence of vote counting fraud in Broward County. A judge said he sees no evidence of wrongdoing in the vote counting in Broward County and urges all sides to ramp down the rhetoric. A judge said he sees no evidence of wrongdoing, blah, blah, blah. Circuit Chief Judge Tutter said during an emergency hearing on Monday that there is a need to reassure citizens that the integrity of the Florida recount is being protected. To that point, he urged lawyers for Rick Scott and others representing the Republican and Democratic parties and their candidates, as well as Broward County election officials, to agree on some minor additions to security, including the addition of 3 more law enforcement officers to keep an eye on things. And the judge says that if anyone has any evidence of voter fraud or irregularities, they should report it to law enforcement. Democratic United States Senator Bill Nelson is suing the Florida Department of State in an effort to count vote by mail ballots that were postmarked before Election Day but not delivered before the polls closed. Essentially, the date was right, but the mail didn't get them there in time. Nelson's attorney, Mark Elias, filed a lawsuit on Monday saying that voters should not be disenfranchised because the mail delivery delays aren't their fault. That's true. Unofficial election results show Nelson trailing Republican Rick Scott by just 0.14%. That's it. As an example, he cited Miami-Dade County postal facility that was evacuated when, because of explosive devices sent to prominent Democrats, were processed there. Florida's 7 p.m. Election Day receipt deadline for voters by mail burdened the right to vote of eligible voters, the lawsuit said. Elias wants all ballots postmarked before November 6th to be counted if they are received within 10 days of the election. Agreed. So that's what we are. This video is not going to be long. Just an update on what's taking place in Broward County. I would say this, though. It seems like a rational position to me to say if a person is born in this country, if a person is a legal citizen of this country and has the right to vote, they should be able to vote. It's a nonsense argument to me that people make this case of people shouldn't be able to vote or find gamesmanship in order to try to keep people from voting, because then you have to ask the question, why are you trying to keep people from voting? Which is ultimately they're trying to subvert the will of the democratic process itself and trying to impose what they want on a large body of people who they know absolutely doesn't want it. Otherwise, they wouldn't go through the process of trying to do it. I want votes to count. Win or lose, whoever wins or loses, I want the votes to count. So, I'll end this here. I'm not going to keep this one on long. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And you can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.